Okay, so this week is Parshas Noach, and that's the week of the big flood. And it kind of feels like very appropriate for this week. We just all feel like we're kind of in this flood of so much going on, so overwhelming with the situation in Israel, with everyone personally. You just feel like this whole flood of turmoil all around us. Anyone feeling that way?
Yes.
Yes.
No,
Okay.
very relaxed.
I feel like we just passed it.
Yes.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, it's like all
The flood of the
holidays.
holidays, right?
Well, we're going to see how it's related as well, okay? That's also related. So the story, what happens in the story? The story goes that the people of the land are full of Hamas, which means violence and robbery and corruption. So the whole land is filled with such corruption and violence, and so much so that God sees that there's only one righteous person, and that righteous person and his family is Noah. And God commands him to build this teva and build it for many, many years so that people all around him should see and should actually try to change in their ways. This was like a reminder, change, do something to stop the situation. But we're told that Noah wasn't really he was a great person in God's eyes, but he didn't really go out there to try to convert people, to try to tell people, let's change, let's do things. He did his thing, and whoever came, whoever was inspired, but he didn't pray for the nation, he didn't pray for the people, he didn't actively really try to inspire them. Unlike Avraham, who says that he used to go out and he used to really try to inspire people in any way that he could. And that's the difference really between Noach and Avraham. But Noach was a very righteous man in his own way. And he finally goes into the teva, and it rains and rains and rains for how many days? 40, yes, 40 days. 40 days and 40 nights. The rains are coming down from the heavens and from the earth. Everything is opening up, and just the fountains underneath the earth, the heavens from on top, it's just pouring down. 40 days and 40 nights. When the flood finally finishes, he tries to see if he can go out, but it continues to be very wet, and the teva doesn't settle until many days later, over 100 days later, until finally it settles on Har Ararat, and that's when he sends out the raven and then the dove, 2 doves, to make sure that there's actually dry land. So he doesn't actually leave the teva for at least an entire year, till he's actually able to go out and populate the earth. And when he goes out, God commands him, go out there and populate the earth. And that's really this week's Torah portion. We see later on, the next generation is also in this Torah portion, where we have what's called Dor Haflaga, where the people are building this tower to rebel against God. So we don't really see that people change. There still is this rebelliousness, but not in the same way. And we're going to talk about that.
Is that the Tower of Babel?
Tower of Babel, yes. And at the very end of this week's Torah portion, we do have a little glimmer of light in that Abraham was born. And next week's Torah portion, we have when Abraham is told to leave your birthplace and go out and become a nation on his own. But let's talk about this week's Torah portion.
So this is before Abraham.
This is before Abraham, yes. The flood actually happened in the Jewish year 1656. See, in Judaism, we know everything. Like, we know exactly which year happened, what happened. We have a record of it all, like of everything that's been happening. So it actually happened in 1656, which it says was the 600th year of Noah's life. And we're going to talk about that as well. Okay, so the waters of this whole waters of the flood are called Mei Noach, the waters of Noach, and the whole protagonist in the story is the name of this week's Torah portion, which is Noach, which is the person to whom this is all happening. Anyone know what the word Noach means? Rest, pleasant, tranquility, exactly. Reach nichayach, like a restfulness, a tranquility. And it's a serenity almost, right? Like this resting. And the question is, the name of the Torah portion is Noach, which is supposed to talk about what is going on in the Torah portion. And yet the Torah portion seems to be the exact opposite of restfulness and tranquility. And in fact, the waters of the flood are called Mei Noach, the waters of Noach. And again, this is like so opposite what they were. They were waters of destruction, waters of flood, waters of turmoil, waters that were destroying the world. So how is it that we call this week's Torah portion Noach, which means restfulness? And in order to answer that, we have to say that really the waters of the flood were not just there as a punishment. You know, on the surface level, we look at the waters and we say, oh, the people were so bad, the people were terrible, there was immorality in the world, so God came and he punished them. But when we look deeper, and particularly in the teachings of Hasidus, we learn that these waters were not just waters of punishment, but the point of the flood was to purify the world. It was waters of purification. So it wasn't just this turmoil, but it was in order to purify it. And that's why it says, how long was the flood? It says, we said, how long was it? How many days? 40 days and 40 nights, right? The number 40 is significant in the sense that when we look at, when we're building a mikvah is a pool of water where we go to purify ourselves. This is something that women do after they menstruate. They go and they purify themselves, they reach a higher level. A mikvah is also used by men on Erev Shabbat. They go to the mikvah in order to purify themselves for this higher level, this higher energy that they're about to receive. Before holidays, men will do that as well. Before Yom Kippur, some of you may have gone to the mikvah again to prepare for this special day. The Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur would go in several times into the mikvah to reach this higher level of purification. Anyone know what else happens with a mikvah?
It's like a little like pots and pans and glasses.
Exactly. You take all your utensils and you put it in, you dunk it into this mikvah. And why do you do it? Because now any utensil that was made by someone who's not Jewish is now being used by you for mitzvot, hopefully. You're trying to elevate this thing so that you can use it for positive things, for positive, higher purposes.
Also, post-menopause, it can be used if someone did not use it before.
Yes, absolutely. Post-menopause, it's a great thing to do. Not only can you do it, you can do it that last time. And it changes, like with spirituality, we change things around. So spirituality isn't linear, but spirituality is all-encompassing. So the benefits of the mitzvah of mikvah is retroactive. So you do it one last time, and it's like you get all the blessings as if you've done it all before. And, you know, in today's times, you could really see this in terms of how something that you do afterwards sometimes saturates you and benefits you in so many ways. So that's really a benefit of mikvah. And if you haven't yet looked at the mikvah here or seen the mikvah, I encourage you to actually go into the mikvah and to speak to Chani about how to make an appointment and to actually do it one time. You don't have to commit yourself to many times, but every single time that you go to mikvah, it's a beautiful, beautiful mitzvah that Jewish women have been doing throughout the millennia. So you're connecting yourself to them.
The question, I've done it. How is the water different? Where does the water come from? What gives it purity?
So the water is a natural body of water, and that's why sometimes you'll see that they build a mikvah and they have to wait till the rain actually comes, because there's rainwater that actually has to come into it. And it's built in a way that the rainwater actually touches.
Percentage of it is rainwater? Or all rainwater?
No, it's
No,
not all.
it's not.
There's, how do you say, Lauren? Like a cistern, like there's the part where it holds the rainwater, and then it leads up to the mikvah.
Right,
How much
exactly.
is the percentage though?
It just has to intermingle. So it just has to freely intermingle. So you have this kind of cistern, like she said, where the rainwater is collected, and that is freely intermingling with the waters of the mikvah. So as long as there's no barrier stopping it from touching, because water, everything touches and everything mixes.
Did I miss it, or did I not hear it about what's significant about the number 40?
40, no, you didn't hear it
Okay.
yet, yeah.
I was like, I maybe sometimes I drift, but.
No, we're doing the pitch for the mikvah first.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, so one other thing that mikvah is used for, which we didn't mention, is
Before marriage.
before marriage, yes, absolutely. Again, you're preparing yourself. Conversion. Again, conversion because you're preparing yourself to now take on these extra mitzvot, this holier status, this holier lifestyle is what you're trying to prepare yourself for. So mikvah is used throughout Jewish life in various ways, but the meaning of the mikvah is that it purifies you and prepares you for this new receiving of this new level of holiness that you are going to be living. And that's why
What does mikvah mean?
sorry?
What does it mean?
Mikvah means actually a gathering. Mikvah is a gathering of water. That's what it means, which is what it is. It's a gathering of water.
Can you use that word for anything else, or only?
I think it just means the gathering of with water. Oh, tikva.
No, like that.
Every collection of water in a natural body
It's called.
is called mikveh.
Yes, exactly right.
Okay.
Yeah. So
It doesn't like, but the mikveh that you dip in is significant, especially
Right.
with the number 40, whatever it is.
yes, and the mikvahs, and the women's mikvahs are even especially, there's a lot of laws going on with it of what has to be and very specific how it has to be built. But one of the laws of the mikvah,
Different than a man's mikvah?
yes, it's more
Yeah.
Because
complicated.
every man who's been in a mikvah, I mean, my son included in Israel, they just say it's disgusting.
No, the women's mikvah has to be very clean.
Or Sharon's husband built on it.
Yeah.
Oh, it was not easy.
He said that was the hardest
It was
job.
always anything he ever
And he's done a lot.
He's done a lot. Yeah, no, and a women's mikvah is very clean.
Yeah.
It has to be
Why
very
isn't
clean.
it theirs is equally nice? If it's
Because-
such a holy, experience.
Because the point of a woman going into the mikvah, there's a lot of laws in terms of, it's a big mitzvah. It's a man's obligation to go to the mikvah is more of a custom for Erev Shabbat or Erev Yom Tov. It's not the laws. The woman's is an actual law. And so that's why the laws are much more stringent in terms a man could just go into a swimming pool, which is like a body of pooled water.
Yes.
But a woman can't just go into a swimming pool. There's more laws. Like a convert as well, it would be more laws. Be a specific mikvah.
Most men go one after another after.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Also, men are not very
She's not
particular
making-
with. Yeah. No. Women's mikvahs. I mean, if you've seen different mikvahs around the world, they're like the most gorgeous spa-like, which befits the Jewish woman. You know, this
I was
is
just gonna say, and that's the difference, why women don't have to do the same things or present everything as men, because women are at a higher level.
100% for
And
sure.
This just gives you an example of it.
Right. Yes. So yeah, it's
Of
beautiful.
consciousness.
And if you haven't yet seen the mikvah, I urge you to go and make an appointment with Chani, because it's really, people who have gone there say they come out and it's kind of like a very holy spiritual experience to do it. If you prepare yourself properly and you really encounter it, it's,
You're convincing me.
you definitely should. Try it. What do you lose?
Well, if you're past menopause, it's already too late.
Well, no, you can go one more time.
That's exactly what she said.
It's not, right, and you have to be at the cusp of menopause? I mean,
No, anytime someone did not go,
If you did go, then it's
not necessarily if they went,
That you can do that.
Absolutely, before marriage, 100%, yes, and after marriage as well. It's a constant thing.
Can you check?
And the guys go out.
In a lake. An ocean people do, but again, you have to speak to like a rabbi to make sure that the situation is the right circumstance. In other words, that it's the right body of water and the right situation that you can actually do. But yeah, people do go in the ocean. Like my daughter's in the Bahamas and they don't have a mikvah there yet.
I have a question about Toivel and pots. So if I put a pot in a certain bingo, and it's a very kosher, very highly black kosher place, are those frying pans?
Depends where it was made. It depends where it was made. So
So
you'd
do I
have to
call them to ask them?
you'd have to ask a
If
rabbi.
it's made by a Jewish, but if
They
it's made
do
by
so, I
Jewish,
don't
you
know.
don't have to.
In
And usually
Israel.
it would say on it that doesn't need the tvila.
Oh,
It
so
doesn't
I
say
haven't
it.
used it. I
Right.
Yeah.
haven't used it because I waiting to Toivel it, but I don't know if I really have to with me. sport in bingo because.
No, it doesn't, no.
It
Bingo
doesn't
doesn't
say-
It doesn't mean, they just
It's
sell,
not
they don't
made in
make it.
China.
Yeah,
Like
exactly,
Betty
yeah.
Crocker, it
So-
said you didn't have to toilet. It's,
Oh,
I
okay.
see on certain things it might, says you
It
don't
will
have
say,
to.
right.
Otherwise, Evergreen, you should know,
I mean,
Yeah.
is
it's
a
okay.
toiveling mikveh
Right,
that is
yes.
just easy as pie
Right.
to use.
Yeah.
Right,
One,
on the
two,
side.
three,
Yeah, I've
you're
gone
in
there.
it. It's, I love, that's the
I've
best
gone
thing
there.
that ever happened.
That's great, yes.
Have a little
There
It's
is
like-
sign.
it's
Well,
in
one
the
by
back.
one, they have
In
it
the
both
back.
sides.
This is
Like,
what
if
I
I
do.
give you a
I'll
picture.
tell you, I'll tell you, which is it? It's outside.
On the side or in the back?
It's only for killing. It's only
Inside.
for killing.
No, Oh, it's very nice, it's very easy.
It's not for your body, no, right?
Yeah,
You don't have to go to
Pops.
There used to be a.
Pots, yeah.
No, not for your I have another question. So if somebody is not toiling, is that considered unkosher?
it's not considered not kosher, but it's considered not table, so you really need to
It's a
type.
typo.
Yeah.
Now, you know, my kitchen was overturned a very
And
long
there's
time
a
ago.
brook
And I mean, I really didn't understand what was going on, so maybe.
Yeah, that's it.
And all my stuff was taken out, and all my old pots I know were, I'm not sure what was and what wasn't. So,
You can always do it again, I mean, it doesn't,
if
you
you
don't,
used the pot,
you could definitely do it again, yeah. We don't, yeah, yeah, you can still do it again. Yeah, but even if it's kosher, there's a different thing to be titled. Yeah. A use that was non-titled, you can still title it, yes. Yes, yes.
I was ready to.
You can still do, you don't say, you wouldn't say a blessing if you're not sure. Otherwise, you say a blessing when you title it. If it's aluminum or glass, you can title it, yes, without a blessing.
I just want something. Like aluminum on the bottom, and it's covered with a cover that looks like plastic. It looks like a plastic over, like some kind of.
You know, anything, if you're not sure, you can always do it without a blessing, yeah. It doesn't hurt, yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Okay, so back to this. And I just want to say one more thing about the mikvah. When I give a talk sometimes on mikvah, there's like, it's usually a mixed crowd with young and old, and sometimes like there's some older ladies that are there and they say, wow, this is like, what can I do? I also want to go. So you were saying, I'm tempting you to go. Definitely do go because it's worth the experience. And sometimes they're like, I already went the last time. How do I keep on going? How do I continue going? And you know, so
Can an endless podium mikvah too? Like,
no, not for a women's mikvah. No,
you can.
no. You'd have to go to the actual, because there's a lot of laws involved in building a mikvah.
Oh.
And one of the laws in building the mikvah is that it needs to be a measurement of 40 sa'ah, which I'm not sure exactly how much that is, but that's a certain measurement in order to be, meaning it has to be large enough for a person to actually dunk their entire body in it. And
Sa'ah, you
that,
said?
sa'ah, yeah, it's a sa'ah.
Sanitizing.
So this teaches us, okay, the fact that we have 40 days of the waters of the Mabul, 40 days and nights that the waters of the Mabul were pouring, and that the mikvah needs to be 40 sa'ah, 40, this measurement. This is a correlation between the two. There's a connection between the two. And say the Hasidic masters that the waters of the flood were actually this tevilah, this dunking in the mikvah, this special purification process for the entire world, for this entire world, for the entire earth. And that's what the world was going through, this purification process. It wasn't just this, oh, we're going to punish the people of the earth. It was a way of purifying the world. And we can understand this as well on a personal level. What does this mean? I mean, we're going to talk about it on the world level, what that meant. But on a personal level, when we are having, what does it mean, the waters of the flood? You know, we often go through this flood in life where you just feel so overwhelmed from all sides. You feel like the turmoil is just coming at you. I mean, nowadays we're very often feeling this way, but there's just so many challenges and difficulties, and whether personal, communal, whatever, they're just being thrown at you from all sides. These waters of flooding are just coming right at you. And it could be worries of parnasa, worries of livelihood. It could be worries of health. It could be whatever the situation, whatever the challenge is. It just feels like you're just drowning in despair, drowning in difficulty, drowning in these challenges. And when we are going through that, how do we cope? How do we cope with that situation? So how did Noah cope with this situation? God tells him to build an ark. In Hebrew, how do we say ark? Teva. What does the word teva also mean? Word. 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 The word teva means word. It's a word. Yes, teva with a test is nature. This is with a tough, right. So he tells him to build a teva, which is also translated as word, which means it's giving us a little practical suggestion, a very important practical suggestion. When we feel like we are drowning in the challenges of this world, when we feel like we're so overwhelmed with this flood of turmoil surrounding us, what should we do? Enter into the teva. Go into the teva. Bo el ha-teva. Come to the teva. Come to the word. Which word? The words of Torah, the words of tefillah, of prayer. The words of Torah and tefillah can help you when you feel so overwhelmed by the situation that you're in. Come into the teva, enter into this different mind space, this mind space in which you are realizing that there's a plan, there's a purpose, there's a God who's controlling the world, there's a God who's orchestrating everything. When you enter into that state, meaning either you learn Torah and you get that perspective, or you do prayer and you get that perspective, your perspective changes so that the turmoil that you're feeling subsides, somewhat at least, because you realize there's a purpose to it. It's not just this chaos, this total chaotic existence that's constantly happening, but there's a purpose to it. And not only is there a purpose to it, but the waters themselves are Mei Noach, are the waters of tranquility, the waters of serenity, meaning that the whole purpose of our challenges and what we're going through is, at first it really confuses us. At first the challenge, you're going through a difficulty, you're going through a challenge, you're having a health issue, you're having a livelihood issue, a financial crisis. At first it makes you feel so confused and so alarmed and so, I can't, right? But the point of that challenge is to actually break a part of us, that egocentricity, that ego-centered part of us, that perspective that is so consumed with us thinking that we are the ones in charge and that we are the ones who are controlling it, that we almost get out of ourselves. We come out of ourselves and realize that there's a creator in this world. We enter into this new perspective, hopefully, and with the aid of Torah and Tefillah, it becomes easier to enter into this perspective where we realize it's not about us controlling, it's not about us taking care of things. We sometimes become such control freaks that we think that we're the ones in control, and if we do things differently, and if we just did this, or if we just did that, suddenly you realize when some crisis happens, you're not in control. It's not up to you. It's not up to what you did or didn't do. Obviously, we try and we put in the effort that we need to do, but we realize that there's a bigger picture at play here, that God is in control, and we give ourselves over to God. We realize, God, you are the one in control, and only you are the one in control. And my life and my circumstances and the world is how you are running it. And the purpose of our challenge is to get us to that point. So really, really, when you think about it, if we can just get to that point, then we don't need the challenge anymore, right? If we can just get to the point where we feel that we're out of our focus of self, and we realize that there's this greater picture, there's this greater being that is holding us and creating us and in charge of us and taking care of us, then we no longer need the challenge to wake us up and put us in that situation,
A place of surrender.
this place of serenity. And we see that very often. Like, none of us want challenges, and we're not asking for challenges, but challenges do have this way of shaking us up, waking us up. And even, God forbid, the challenge that we're going through as a nation now, which is a horrific, and we certainly don't want to see any good in it because it's beyond, it's not good. But there is this element of us being woken up. We're being woken up from our sleep. You know, we're someone said it's like, you know, when the world is just sleeping, when people don't realize, you just go to sleep and you just say, oh, this is just, you know, this is just what happens. But you're being woken up and you're saying, hold on, we are Am Yisrael. We are the Jewish people. We're not just any nation. We are the Jewish people, and there's a point to our existence, and there's a point to who we are, and there's a point to our country, and there's a reason for us to fight for it. And this is about our survival, really. So something in you is being woken up. And that is true for any kind of situation, any kind of challenges as well. And that's why the word for, we spoke about immersing in the mikveh. The word for immersing in the mikveh is called tefillah. You taivel in the mikveh, or you go into the mikveh. It's called tefillah, to immerse in the mikveh, completely immerse yourself in the mikveh. And if we look at the Hebrew word of tefillah, we also get the word habitul, which means this self-nullification, in the sense that we're no longer self-concerned. We're no longer self-focused. Habitul is this state where we're no longer feeling this sense of me. And you see that when you completely dunk into the water, you completely immerse yourself into the water, you're one with the water. You're one with the outside. And the moment that you're completely in that water, you get to this realization that there is more to the world than me. I'm not anymore focused on just me and my needs and my wants, and that I'm in control. And when you come out of that water, you're now almost like a child that's reborn. You're coming out of the water like a child that comes out of the womb. And that's why the mikveh is also compared to the womb. And that's why the word mikvah also is compared to the word tikva, which means hope, because you come out with this renewed hope as this renewed person, as this almost reborn person who has entered into the teva, entered into the word of Torah, and entered into the word of tefillah, of prayer, so that you've gained this new perspective that it's not all me. And the burden when we feel that, I think the greatest gift that we can give to ourselves, to our children, to humanity, is this faith in this greater being. It's not just the fact that it's a Torah commandment and we want to fulfill the Torah commandment, but when you can actually believe in this greater being who is taking care of you, who is holding you, your shoulders become a lot straighter. Because it's not you who has to control everything, and you who has to take care of everything, and you that is in charge, but you realize that there's a grand plan. It's not chaos. It's not just happenstance, that whatever happens, happens. There's a plan, and there's a creator who is taking care of you and holding you. And that really is the greatest gift, if we can cultivate that feeling and that faith. And that feeling and faith is cultivated through the teva, through the Torah study, and through the tefillah, through the connecting to God, through praying, through cultivating this relationship with God. We can cultivate that feeling where we can stand a little taller because we don't feel that huge burden on us constantly. We might not understand why things are happening. We might not understand how they could be happening, but we have the comfort in knowing that there's a grand plan. And there's a creator who loves us, who is causing it to happen. And for ultimately, this is going to be Mei Noach, the waters of Noach, the waters of tranquility. Because the purpose of the flood, although it came down for 40 days and 40 nights, and although there was this element of punishment in it, ultimately it brought tremendous tranquility to the world. It brought the world to a higher state, as we're going to talk about in a second. And that's why it's so important every day when we wake up to enter into that word as well. The first thing that we do upon waking up is we say Moda'ani. We enter into the world of the world. As soon as you wake up, you're groggy, you're half asleep, you're not asleep, you're thinking about all the things that need to be done in the day, you're worried about all the responsibilities that you have. The first thing you do is Bo El HaTeva, come into the Teva. Set the mood, set the tone, come into the Teva, say the words thanking God, giving gratitude to God. And suddenly your perspective is completely changed. It's not about me and what I have to do and all about my responsibilities and my being in charge, but it's about God has granted me life, another moment of life, another day of life, and God is in charge here, and God is helping me through. And just as God helped me to get to this point, God will help me to get to the points that I need to get to. He'll help me to do what needs to be done. And soon after we say that Moda'ani prayer, we say the morning blessings. And if you look at the morning blessings, it's full of things that are, you're already very often dressed at that point, and you're saying Malbisha Ramim, that God, thank you God for clothing the naked, for putting clothes on the naked. You're already dressed. Why are you thanking God for the clothes that you have? Obviously you have clothes, and for waking you up and all these things that you are already there. And the point is, no, you're realizing that God is the one that has clothed you, that God is the one that has provided you. Even if right now you're wearing clothes already, you're realizing that creation is really nothingness except for the fact that God is constantly recreating it. Because really there's nothing, but God is constantly recreating creation. And this is what it says. It says, there's a Torah phrase that says, Ezehu Chacham, who's a wise person? Haroa as Hanolad, someone who sees what's going to happen. And what it means to me is that who is wise? Someone who sees what's going to happen. So you're driving along and you see that the car is going to cut into you, so you go slow, right? You can envision what's going to happen. Or you see a circumstance, you see a problem you foresee a problem, so you avoid that problem. But on a deeper level, according to Hasidic teachings, what does this mean? Ezehu Chacham, who is wise? Haroeh es Hanola, the person who sees, who is creating things, who is constantly creating things. And who is that? Obviously God. Everything is being created and sustained only from God. And when we realize that perspective, it's like when you blow a balloon, right? You're blowing the balloon. It's only when you're blowing it that the balloon is actually blowing up. When you stop your blowing, the balloon is just going to go like that. So if we could realize that God is constantly blowing, God is constantly holding, creating us, and it's with the spiritual energies and powers that we are constantly being recreated, then we realize, I need to thank God for the clothes that I'm wearing right now, because it could revert to nothingness in any moment. Everything could revert to nothingness. I could revert to nothingness. It's only that God is constantly renewing and recreating me. And that's why it says, the Zohar says that there was this rabbi whose name was Rabbi Ye'isa the elder. And it says that he would pray for his sustenance even when the food was right in front of him. So I have the cake like right in front of me, and I'm saying, God, please give me the cake. He would pray for the cake when it's right there. And the question is, why is he praying for the cake right when it's there, when it's in front of him? But he realized he was somebody who was a chacham, a smart person, a wise person, who haroeh es hanolad. He could see who is creating it, who is sustaining it, who is constantly giving us. When we can see who is constantly giving us, providing us, creating us, then we realize that our problems are being recreated just because there's a purpose to it. There's a purpose to it to cause us an awareness. And that awareness is this feeling of ha-bitul, this lack of focus on self, lack of egocentricity, but this focus on a greater being, that God is calling us, and God is sustaining us and holding us. So the question is, if the flood was such a great thing that we're talking about, that the flood actually caused Mei Noach, it caused tranquility, it caused something positive to the world. So why is it that God said, I'm not going to make any more a flood? Why did God say, I'm not going to ever? He promised us. In fact, we say a blessing every time we see a rainbow, which is, by the way, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, zocher habrit, that God remembers the covenant, v'ne'eman bivrito, and he is trustworthy in his covenant, v'kayam b'mamaro, and he is faithful in what he said. So we say, thank you, God, for remembering the Brit that you made with us and being faithful to it and making sure that this is not going to happen to us again. And God said to Noach, after he made the teva, he said, I'm giving you this rainbow, and this is the rainbow as a sign that forever I will not make any more flood anymore in this world. And the question is, why would God make this promise? If we're saying that the whole purpose of the flood was really to rectify us, why was this necessary? Did God say, oh, okay, I'll reconcile myself to the fact that people are going to be bad, that people are going to be wicked? Or did God say, I made a mistake, I shouldn't have done it? And the answer is no. God changed the world with the flood. That's what we keep saying, that the flood was like a mikvah. It was like a purification process. The world actually became a more pure place. How so? That until then, people were very centered on the way that they were. A person grew up, and people lived very, very long lives, but a person was the way that he was, he didn't change. It was very, very hard for a person to change. After the waters of the teva battered into the ground, it actually changed the atmosphere. It made it thinner and made it more able to receive. So much so that we see that there was no concept of a rainbow before. According to some, the rainbow was before, but according to some, there was no concept of a rainbow. But only after the teva, after the flood, is there this concept of a rainbow, because the atmosphere actually grew thinner and more transparent, more able to receive and be changed. And this was a reflection on the spiritual state, but the spiritual state of people actually changed, that people became able, there was a pathway to change. That didn't mean that you did change. As we see right after was the whole thing of the Tower of Babel. It doesn't mean that you did change, but there was this pathway that you could change. The winds of teshuvah, of repentance, were in the air, that you could grasp it. It was easier to change. You weren't so set, so thick and set in your ways. Just like the atmosphere became thinner, that now you can actually see the light refracting, which is what a rainbow is, that you see the light refracting by the sun, because the atmosphere itself changed in a physical way. So that was the point of the flood. Now, I want to go into one more thing that I found really, really fascinating in this week's Torah portion. And that is, so the words of the Torah is that in the 600th year of the life of Noach, all the well springs of the great deep burst open, and the windows of the heavens were opened. That's the words of the Torah. That's the words of this week's Torah portion. Now the Zohar, which is a very mystical commentary, tells us that there's a hint to this, about something that's going to happen in the future. And what is the hint? The Zohar says, and this is the words of the Zohar, in the 600th year of the 6th millennium, because it was the 600th year of Noach's life, in the 600th year of the 6th millennium, the floodgates of supernal wisdom will open, and the well springs of lower wisdom will burst forth to prepare the world to enter into the 7th millennium. Now, anyone know what year we are in the Jewish calendar? 5785, exactly. So that is, we are in the, which millennium? Sixth. We are in the 6th millennium, right? By the year 6000, we're going to envision a completely different state a completely different state. The time period of Mashiach is going to bring us to that state, a completely different state of this world. However, in order to prepare us for the time period of Mashiach, it's telling us that in the 600th year of the 6th millennium, that would be which Hebrew year? 5600, but we go back like 100 years before that, just like you go in the 6th millennium, it's 5000. So this would be 5500 to 5600. In those years, there's going to be this tremendous bursting forth of supernal wisdom from up high, and the fountains of the earth are going to burst forth with this other kind of tremendous wisdom from below. And the Zohar tells us that this is talking about,
Chatametim, it sounds like.
Well, it's before Tchiyat Hametim. Tchiyat Hametim would be before the year 6000, but this is talking about something that's going to prepare the world for Mashiach. And this is talking about a tremendous amount of wisdom that's going to descend to the earth. Spiritual wisdom that's going to come from up on high, and actual scientific, technological wisdom that's going to come from the earth. When we look at history, and we look at this time period of 5500 to 5600, which is basically the 1700s, 1750 to 1850, approximately, we see this was the time period of Industrial Revolution. Tremendous change that there was from the first 17 centuries of this world. You know, if you lived in year zero till you got to 1700, the person would be pretty comfortable coming to those same kind of villages and the same kind of states. When you go from the 1700 to the 1800, completely different world that you see. The average lifespan of people at that time was 30 years old. That's how long the lifespan was. Most people did not know how to read. Most people did not. There was classes of society that was completely fixed. If you look at the world, and I looked at this chart that had the gross national product, gross world product at the time, the GDP, and you look at it, it's basically flat until you get to about the 1800s, where it starts going up tremendously until now. It keeps going up because we keep on through the Industrial Revolution. We were able to have machinery, which created tremendous change throughout the world. Some discoveries that happened during this time period. In 1755 was the creation of the refrigerator. And imagine the change that a refrigerator had on society. 1800 was the electrical battery. 1821 was electric motor. 1822 was the first programmable mechanical computer. Okay, so these are changes that are from below. This is tremendous technology is going to come spurt forth from the earth. This is the physical, scientific revelations that are going to be discovered during the time that the Zohar predicts, specifically in this time period. Now, what happened from the spiritual perspective at this time period? The supernal floods from above. This was actually the time period of the birth and the revelation of the Alter Rebbe and the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov was born 36 years before. He was born at the end of the 1600s, but it was in the year 1734, which is 5 years before 5500, that the Baal Shem Tov was told to reveal himself and reveal his teachings, to reveal the teachings of Chassidus, which is the inner dimension of the Torah, the secrets of the Torah. None of this was known to the masses before that. None of the mystical aspect of the Torah, the Kabbalistic aspect of the Torah, the Hasidic perspective of the Torah was known. It was all very, very hidden, secretive knowledge that wasn't known and was not widely spread. And the Alter Rebbe, the Baal HaTanya, if you heard of the Tanya, he was born 5 years after the year 5500, in the year 1740, in the secular year of 1745. And of course, he was teaching all of these secrets of the Torah as well. And this, it says, is going to happen in this 600th year of the 6th millennia, the year 6000. And if you look at, if we look at the all these unprecedented things that were happening during this time period, these scientific discoveries as well as the spiritual revelations, we can ask ourselves, why exactly was it happening? So before we take a look at that, I want to just say, when we look at the days of the week, we can look at the days of the week as each day a millennium. And we're going towards the period of Mashiach. The 7th day is Shabbat, so it's a completely different entity. It's a completely different time period that Mashiach is going to prepare us for. But we're getting to that point in time. So that means that the 6th day is Friday, right? And on Friday, we prepare ourselves for Shabbat. When you go into, I'm sure when you come into Chani's house on Erev Shabbat on Friday, you're going to see the cookies already and everything already. And you will smell it in the air. You'll smell the smell, the delicious aromas of cooking, and you can actually feel Shabbat coming. So if we look at Jewish history as each of the days of the week being that 1,000 millennium period, if we look at Friday, which is the 6th day of the week, we're talking about the 5,000th millennium, right? And which is the millennium that we're in right now. And if we look at that 5,000th millennium, so 5,000 starts, the year 5,000 starts Friday. But it's Friday in Judaism. Where do we start? When do we start? The night or the day? The night. So Friday starts at night, at nighttime. So when is the Friday morning, Friday day? By halfway through. So you got to get to 5,000 plus 500 halfway through. So 5,500 is the morning. It's Friday morning, daybreak. And when you get to 5,750, that's already Chatzais Hayom. That's already midday, when everything is already prepared and everything is already ready. Yeah. So when we talk about this time period of the 6th millennium and all these unprecedented changes, scientific, technological, spiritual changes, why were these things necessary? It says it was necessary in order to prepare us. We're the generation, again, of Mashiach. It's to prepare us to be ready for Mashiach. So how do these we can understand how spiritual revelations prepare us. The teachings of Chassidus really helped us to understand how each and every one of us is a holy being, and how each and every one of us needs to have a spiritual relationship with God. It was all about this relationship with God, which wasn't really understood till then. It was more about God being this master, this punitive thing. If you don't do what he wants, he's going to punish you. Now it's all about this relationship that we have with God. In order to understand that, we needed to understand this relationship that we have with God, and that each and every one of us has a part of God inside of us so we can have that relationship. This prepares us for the marriage that we have with God, which is the time period of Mashiach. So that we can understand the spiritual changes that we needed at this time. What about these scientific revolutionary ideas? Why was that necessary to prepare us for Mashiach? Anyone have any ideas? So first of all, we need to have these technological things as a tool, as a tool to teach us. Like, imagine if we all need Mashiach to be here and to teach us the Torah. How is he going to teach us if the only people that you can reach are like the 10 people around your table? But imagine putting it on email, and imagine putting it on broadcasts, and imagine putting it on radio and on TV, and imagine like sending it out, on YouTube and who knows where else, and on the big wide net. The entire world can now understand and be educated in the ways of God. So this was something so necessary as a tool to teach. It also helps us understand better. Judaism always said that there's Hashgacha pratis, divine providence, that God is watching you. There's an eye that sees you, an eye that takes note. There's we even say in the prayers, an eye that sees, an ear that hears, and everything is written down. And you wonder, how is it possible? God is in heaven, spiritual. How is he watching so many people at one time and knowing what everyone's doing at one time? But now we see how it's very, very possible with technology, because you have computers who are doing all these things and you are doing so many things at one time. So it makes that concept more accessible and understandable to us. And finally, also what science is doing, science is discovering more and more how everything is real unity. How you look at things and it seems like there's such multiplicity, but you break it down into its smallest form, and you see everything is a molecule. And every molecule is a proton and a neutron, an electron. Everything is the same thing being given the power, given the energy to hold together and be what it is. So you see the unity in everything, in all of creation, how broken down everything seems so diverse, but is really all united as one. And this is helping us to understand the unity of God and how God is unifying all of us. So this is a hint to this time period that the Zohar explains, and there's a lot to go into in that, but this is just a hint of what we're going through, how this is all predicted many, many years ago. All the entire Industrial Revolution, the whole change of mankind, and looking into history, how you see that change happening. This has all been predicted, as well as the explosion of Torah knowledge, and specifically this deeper Torah knowledge where we really understand how each and every one of us is so integral in this relationship that we have with God. And this happened all through the Mei Noach, the waters of Noach, this waters that brought tranquility to mankind, the waters that brought us to an awareness, that waters that hopefully bring us now to this awareness that there's a creator of it all and that we are all being sustained, that the waters of turmoil and difficulty and challenge are really for our benefit, and how God is really in control, taking our hand and leading us through it all.